So here's a little off the cuff, helpful, handy hint. um, I have a little time before lunch and teaching and coffee and somewhere in that order. I'm not sure, but um, so this is a little off the cuff. But I've listened to lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of students, and eventually after we get past the learn the note stage, go hands separately and figure out the pitches and the finger numbers and the counting, and then you put it all hands together with the coordination of the together and the right and the left, and then we count it, um, and that's what I call sloppy counting, which is doesn't have to be in any kind of strict speed. It can be very start or fast or slow. That's what I call stage one, and then the way you graduate from that is to the next stage too, which is um, to iron everything out, keep everything on purpose, very steady and robotic. And so all loud or all soft, there's no variety at all. The whole point of that stage two is to just basically even and iron everything out. And so that's where we start working with the metronome a lot. And so when you're graduating again from stage one to two, that little asterisk at the bottom of stage one is you're essentially playing it hands together, assuming that's what the music is, and you're counting it, but it doesn't have to be um, steady counting. It can be called sloppy counting. Sloppy doesn't mean good, bad, or anything indifferent. It just means you're saying the correct counting number with the correct notes. And you can sit there for 5 minutes, and if you say it accurately, that counts as good. When you go to stage two, you're looking for, this is crucial, what I always look for in the, when you're building the piece from the foundation up, is to find the one speed that you can play it at where you don't screw it up. And that could be ridiculously slow. I mean, usually it's incredibly slow, but people walk in on me practicing, having only heard, like the fast, more final version, and their jaws drop because they're thinking, "You practice like that?" I'm like, "Yeah, like 90% of the time." And even up until the moment of the concert, I'm playing everything very slowly and, and all loud or all soft, just to keep it honest. A piece can get out of control after a while. But it's that moment where you figure out what's the speed that I can play it at without making mistakes, is where you start from in stage two, and then you build speeds, and the medium speed is probably uh, your performance speed, and you work very slowly from the slowest of all that you can play accurately at, and just build by one notch at a time, or 5 or 10, and then you want to get a faster speed that uh, you know probably would never perform it at, but if you can do that, then you're probably going to be fine with the slower ones. And also, people get nervous and they tend to rush. I tend to rush. I think most people maybe do. I think people get nervous and they get faster, faster, faster. So you have to know what that feels like to be able to play if it's fast. But anyway, uh, so, and then by then you've played the piece so many times that it's probably memorized, which is good, because then you're out of the notes, and you go into what I call stage three. So if you think of stage one and two as what you're doing, the first stage being kind of the sloppy version, and the second stage being the neatened up one. The third stage is how you do it. So it doesn't change what you do. You're still going to play those notes, but it changes how you do it. So, and that encompasses things like dynamics and timing and articulations and, tone color and instruments and orchestration and storylines and characters and scenery and, physics and painting and dance and gesture and, emotions. And I mean, how do you sort of quantify those qualities? And then we go to stage four, which is actually, you don't quantify the quality. You actually have the quality of, what is this piece really about? So, and what's the intention? So, and how do I project that? How do I, get it through my being? It's that sort of je ne sais quoi factor where I know I'm hearing it. I just couldn't tell you. So anyway, so I'm not playing the harp a whole lot, as you can tell. I'm just sort of babbling. But I'm going to focus just right now on dynamics. So, and if you think about dynamics, you can have essentially dynamic changes. Now, as a disclaimer, you can also have no dynamics, and that can work for a piece, like if it's a funeral dirge, or if it's like the robot song, or whatever it is. If you prefer playing that way and you want it to sound that way, that's great. It just depends on what the music requires or what you're trying to do with it. But usually, most things in stage three, involve variety. And so, whereas in stage two, there's no variety, stage three is usually all about variety, and that usually creates a little bit more expressive. So I think of it like stage two is more robotic and stage three is more human. You can think of it that way. Humans have sort of an natural tendency to not be so robotic, so it takes a lot of work took me a long time to play more robotically. But it's great when you get it. It's very zen and meditative. I'm not sure if those zen is the right word, but it does sort of put me at sort of a peace with, constant flowing of the same. It feels really great. But the more important thing about that is that you gain control in a way on a piece of music and on an instrument that is not really natural for a human being to do. I think all of us are so inclined to be, or I shouldn't say all of us, but a lot of us are more expressive than just sort of robot. Um, so um, when you think of what can you do with dynamics, one of there's sort of two angles and ways to go about it. One is like the painting version where you've got backgrounds and middle grounds and foregrounds. And if you think of your foreground as a probably a melody line, for example, and your background is a sort of an accompaniment, it's not that they're one's subordinate or one's unequal or whatever. It's just they have different roles. But you usually try, at least I do, try to distinguish between the two. And I hear a lot of the time people aren't aware of that, and so they're playing the background on the same dynamic level as the foreground, and so your ears just don't know where to listen. I talk about like the three L's and the three S's. So like the three L's would be long, loud, legato, and the three S's are the opposite, which is the short, soft, staccato. Um, and that's one way of distinguishing, or several ways, I suppose, you can use to distinguish between parts, not necessarily hands, not like your right hand plays the melody and left hand does the accompaniment. That could switch. Your left hand could be the melody, right hand could be the accompaniment. Also, parts, can go between hands and in and out, and inside each other, and all kind of, coupling and all fun stuff. So you want to try to, at least in my opinion, in a lot of music, you want to distinguish between the two by using dynamics. So that's sort of like working in plateaus. There's no change over time. It's just sort of establishing, well, this is level 9 and this is level 1. I tell the kids, I say, well, while we're talking here, are you thinking about all the air in the room? No, it's there. If it wasn't there, we'd all get, sucked into the vortex. And I say, while we're looking at each other talking, do you like think about the floor? How interesting that is. No, probably not. Has to be there. Otherwise we'd all go, ah! So same thing like in a painting, there's a tree and then there's a, big background for the tree to be sewn onto. For the tapestry, I guess. We have one in the place where I teach. And I said, now if we didn't have the background, um, the tree would go, and if the tree was the same color as the background, or the background was the same color as the tree, for all we know, there could be a whole bunch of trees. You just wouldn't see them because they all blend in. So, um, and I usually say, don't go for lighter blue and blue. I say go for blue and orange. I think the complementary, what do they call secondary colors? There's the color theory, where blue, what is it, blue, orange, and yellow, purple, and green, red. They're opposites, and so they would, make each other stand out more. Anyway, you don't want to go for the same color in different shades of it. Oh, you can do that too. I'm not saying that. But if you're really trying to distinguish between parts, that's why I said level 9 and level 1. I usually start with extremes because kids usually do level 1 and level 1.5, and I can't hear the difference. So that's sort of balance of hands. The other way is change over time, and so that would involve crescendos and decrescendos. And if you think about it, it can happen abruptly. So all of a sudden, it's loud, or all of a sudden it's super soft. And then it could happen over time gradually, like crescendos, decrescendos, like slight accents. And I think a lot of it's very speech related. When we're talking, obviously, like if you're handed a script, unless you're a monotone, hi there, how are you? Oh, Danny, boy, the pipes are blowing. You wouldn't say everything like that unless you're the robot character in the play. But it's usually Bob and Cindy, and Bob goes, hey, Cindy, what's up? And Cindy goes, well, I'm feeling kind of crummy today. So we use all kinds of things to take a flat line and jazz it up. Basically, we have louds and softs, we have highs and lows, we have slows and fasts. And again, shorts and longs and slurs and uhs and stutters and time to react. So you're actually thinking about what the other person said. You're not just spouting your line. There's emotions behind it. There's character that's embedded in that character. Um, character in the character. But anyway, so getting back to change over time dynamics is something, for example, like Oh Danny Boy. You could play, so stage 2 to learn it. You go even just the melody. And more or less you try to control it and keep everything flat. When you go to stage 3, it would be, and a natural tendency is probably to start louder on this to the piano and the harp. I don't know if that's the tendency, but you would do something like, right, and then, so there's, ebbs and flows. And what I suggest to the kids is usually you go for the structure first, if the piece has a structure. And I was just working with a student whose piece was very symmetrical. It was just, 6 groups of 8 measures, and the last one had a ninth measure just to finish it off. But, very, very simple piece. And every 8 measures would divide up into 4 plus 4. And each 4 plus 4 would divide up into 2 plus 2. So I said, work at the tree level, the forest of the trees. I said, if you go, the smallest level would be accenting beat 1 in the measure, maybe. That could be da, da da dum bum 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 ba da, and a 1 2 3 4 1. And the reason why we even have measures is because we hear those regular accents on the contrast on the beat 1, and so we think, oh well, there's a group, and there's a group. And if you didn't have those accents, you wouldn't know necessarily what meter the piece is in. I just listened to another kid play something that was in 6/8, and she had no accents, and at first it was very jarring. I thought, oh, where's the beat? And then by the content of the music, then I was able to um, hear the beat basically where it was, but not because she was adding anything into it. She was just, it's because of the music itself. Um, you want to play up those accents though, because the music has them inherent in them because of the content of the music usually. So, like for example, 3/4 and 6/8, they both have 6/8 notes in a measure, but it depends on whether you group them, 3 groups of 2 or 2 groups of 3 that can really make a difference. So anyway, so I usually try to get people to work on just one level. If you think of structure, it's like a building. There's room, or there's just a room. And then there's groups of rooms, and there's hallways, and then there's floors of hallways, and then there's wings of buildings, and the building, and then a campus, and then the city, and you keep going out and out and out to the universe. Um, you can start any level of structure really, but I asked them to just pick one because there's many levels that you have to shape, and they all sort of nest one within the other. They all influence each other, and you do all of your little shapes in context of slightly bigger ones and even bigger ones and bigger ones. I had a piano teacher describe this. He pulled out this giant. It's like a big, taped together piece of paper, and it was a piece by Bach, and it had like a giant arch and a giant arch and a giant arch, and it had littler arches, littler arches, littler arch, and then smaller, 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 little, arches within arches within arches. My other piano teacher when I was grad school, he said, well, it's like wheels within wheels. He said, while the big wheel is going sort of slowly around, and there's other little wheels inside, maybe 2 wheels that are going slightly twice as fast, and there's other little wheels inside going, even twice as fast as that, quarter speed. Uh, it's like a watch, the old-fashioned watches that had the actual mechanisms that had the big wheels and the littler wheels and then the very fast wheels. All of those are parts of that huge building, and you have to shape every part, and all within context. And that's a lot for a person just starting out in stage 3 to absorb. So, and I'll use any kind of thing I can do. If I can use numbers as opposed to just dynamics like piano, mezzo, and forte, I'll use 1 through 21, and we'll come up. Well, here's this section, and this is at 3, and here's another section that's a lot softer. So make sure you don't start with 1 because you need to be able to get softer. Here's 1, and this is the loud part, and this is 21. And as you're playing the piece, there's various amounts of loudness that go. Um, think of it this way: you can start on the smallest level, which is essentially like measure, 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 and actually beat 1. Sometimes those measures group together, and in this piece, it was 2 measures and 2 measures and 2 measures and 2. And so that made 8 measures. And you just kept doing that, those 8 measures 6 times, making essentially that shape. And so I said, just go home this week and just work on getting that. All your shapes are equal. They go soft, medium, loud, medium, soft, medium, loud. And essentially, you're going from measure 1 to measure 2. The target loud is in beat 1 of measure 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. The next level up would be if you start to notice you're having, not just 2, 2, 2, 2, but those are equal amounts of time. I hate math, just so I'm terrible at it, but I can think proportionally sometimes. Is that a measure of 2 measures? I'm sorry, a unit of 2 measures is essentially like a quarter note, because each little group of 2 measures is the same amount of time. So let's just call it a quarter note, quarter note, quarter note, quarter note. So, and a lot of the time in a measure of 4/4, as we were just talking about, you don't play all those notes the same way. You usually accent something, and it doesn't have to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. It doesn't have to be that. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, or it could be 1, 2, 3, 4. It could be that. It could be any shape at all. Um, so if you're on that slightly higher level, instead of going do zip, do zip, do zip, do zip 4 times, you do it this way. You think of a larger level of a shape. It could be soft shape, louder shape, slightly louder, so, a little bit bigger than the soft, and then even bigger than the loud. So it would be like, if you're using numbers, it would be like 1, 3, 2, 4, okay? And you're still making those little tiny shapes, right? But you're doing it on a larger level. And then, not to, bog it down too much, but you go to the next level up, let's say the tree level, and that entire 8 measure section is all, let's say, maybe medium loud. Then the next section is maybe, it does the same shapes again, maybe reverse. So instead of going, bonk, chink, bonk, chink, it goes chink, bonk, chink, bonk. You do this, maybe the second group of 8 a little bit louder, maybe the third group of 8 a little bit softer. So again, the overall shape of the whole piece going, from those 6 sections, just each one having its own, basic position in the scheme of things, it would be something like da da dee, da dee, da, and that tells a story. And so I think, just again, me personally, that I'd much rather hear a piece played with a lot of variety, but not just sort of on one level, but with all of the levels sort of nested one within the other. Does that make sense? I'll probably put up a visual maybe so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Again, you can use numbers, you can use curves, you can just draw it out. You can make your piece look like a giant tapeworm, all the measures end on end, and you can start sectioning it off and making a building out of that. Um, it and that's also useful when you start to deal with timing, which is another huge way to be expressive. You have abrupt changes of fast and slow. You also have gradual ones, and so all of those two usually complement the many parts of that building. So anyway, I didn't play a whole lot today, but I hope that gives you some idea of how you can use dynamics to make the piece more engaging. So if you have any questions, or if you think of anything you might want to add or anything like that, just, I'm learning too. And I've had to come up as a teacher with a way to explain it that's not only effective, but, that little kids can understand, people just starting out and embarking on, going from just sort of hitting the notes. I will say this, yesterday I was working with this kid. She really, really nailed all of the three-dimensional structure, but it was just absent in terms of, it was just all mechanics. It was like her teacher told her, make a crescendo this much and do that much. And she was getting it, and that's part of it. The mechanics, you have to do it. And I hear this a lot in orchestras too. I mean, like, just they're really good mechanics. They all graduated from, very demanding music schools, a lot of them, and they audition, and the people that hear them, they have to make sure you're able to play all the right notes, and they get in the orchestra, and they do nothing with the notes. I've heard that. I went to a John Williams concert, and I was completely dismayed because it's film music, it's pictorial, it's storytelling, you know, and everything was all in the same plane. The stuff that's supposed to be in the background was, all this, it's like the tree and the stream and the mountain and the house. They're all in the same plane. And no. And then each of those has a little shape, and there was just none of that. And who I blame? The conductor. you know, that's the person who's supposed to, hopefully provide some insight into that and get, inspire players to create those shapes and those pictures and those stories and characters and all of that, emotions and, on and on and on. Gosh, I'm really not standing on a soapbox. I'm kind of not even sitting on one. I don't have a soapbox. What is a soapbox? Is that like an old fashioned? Do people have soapboxes? They must have. I know my mom did laundry, the old fashioned way in a kettle cauldron, back before washing machines and back before TV and all that. Her mom and her sister and her, they would stay home and do laundry all day. Thank God we don't have to do that. I tried it once. I thought, I'm just going to go off the grid and I'll just do all my laundry. I didn't have a washer. I'm just doing all my laundry in the sink. And that was, and then I put my, hung it out in the carport, and that never dried for 4 days. So how did I get off on that? I have a new washing machine. It's a little plug-in, goes into your sink. You don't need a hookup. It's great. I love it. It's the best purchase I've ever made, next to my harps. So anyway, I love this little harp. It's so cutie, isn't it? Isn't it nice? Hi, everybody. Okay, I'm gonna hang up. I have to go eat lunch, and I have to teach, and I have to get coffee. So I'll see you later. Thanks for listening.